Well, we have a distinguished panel from Pen Air Federal Credit Union, like Tim said, and I'll let them introduce themselves and tell you about their areas of expertise.
Good morning, my name is Casey White. I am a branch manager with Pen Air Federal Credit Union. I manage the Car City branch here in Pensacola. I've been with the company for 3 years now, and originally from Bay Minette, Alabama, so it's not a big far of a move, but excited to be here working and talking with you guys today.
Hi, my name is Debbie Kemp, and I'm the AVP of the Credit Resolution Department. We work with delinquency, bankruptcy, repossessions. We try to find resolutions for our members and help them get out of some bad situations. And as Casey, I'm glad to be here and look forward to your questions today.
Well, good afternoon. Appreciate y'all showing up today. My name is Steve O'Reilly. I'm the AVP of Pen Air Asset Management. And asset management is the branch of the credit union that does financial planning and investment advising for members. So we work primarily with folks who are at retirement or close to retirement, and we help them either draw an income from their money for their lifetime, grow their money, or protect their money as they wish. I've been doing this about 25 years. I do have a bachelor's degree from here in accounting. That was way yonder a long time ago, and that was in '86, so I'm glad to be here.
Okay, well, we'll get started. I have was sent a list of questions that students turned in, and I've kind of streamlined those, and we'll go through this list of questions. After a question's asked, if you have some follow-up questions on that topic, feel free to raise your hand. We'll get those in. If we don't get to your questions, we're going to finish up about 12:30-ish, and the panel will be able to answer individual questions after that as well. So I'll just jump right in with the first question, and some of our panelists here will answer. So what is your advice on establishing credit and building a good credit rating, and what are credit ratings, or what are credit scores, and what are they good for?
I'll go ahead and talk about the credit reporting. You need to establish a good credit rating. It will follow you throughout your whole life. When you are trying to get a new apartment, even insurance on your automobile or your homes, any of the little things that you do now, they run a credit report. So you want to make sure your credit scores are good. Your credit scores are going to be based upon how you pay, how much debt you have out there. So you need to be sure that if you are going out and getting into debt, that you're paying it back in a timely manner. And if you want to start off by establishing some credit, I feel like that one of the best ways to do that is to go out and get a secure credit card, to where you secure some funds against that credit card, or possibly have a co-signer. And when you get these first credit cards, make sure you're paying them back in a timely manner, and also make sure you have some sort of a company, or like Credit Karma, some of those that will help you when you're not paying something on time if somebody else has used your credit card. So just ensure that you have those tools available to you as well.
Well, you answered part of the second question. Should everybody get a credit card? Do you think all college students should get one? How should they use those things? How should they use them?
So I'll actually take that. When I was in college, I went to a ministry school, and I tell this story every time, and so you were here last time you heard it, I apologize. I was in my 20s making $500 a month working for a ministry school. Don't know how I'm alive or this fat off of $500 a month, but I made it. And so I needed more money, and they weren't willing to give me a raise, and so the advice that I went to, they told me to go get credit cards. Well, I did off of $500 a month, and lived like a rock star for a little while because it was money, and I didn't have much in my 20s. And so then, once the credit cards were maxed out, I went back to my pastor and was like, hey, so I did what you said and got some credit cards, and now they're asking me to pay them. And he was like, oh, just don't. So I didn't. And so therefore, my credit score in my 20s took a beating. So I would say this: should college students get credit cards if you are going to use them wisely? Yes, they can be a bad thing, or they can be a good thing when they're used adequately and correctly. You have to pay attention to your balances, make sure that you're never really maxing it out. Keep it at a below 50%-ish kind of thing like that. And then make sure you're making those payments, even if it's the minimum payment. If you're establishing credit and wanting to start up a good credit history, you don't want to pay it off every single time, because what you want to do is establish a credit history. So, are credit cards good for college students? Yes, if they're going to use them wisely. No, if they're only making $500 a month and you can't pay them back. So.
And also, when you first get your credit card, a lot of people will just charge a little bit the first month or two, and you'll get your statement and it's like $25, $35. You're like, oh, I can do this. Then you start charging it up. What you don't realize is when it hits that $2,000 mark, you're talking more along the lines of $100 to $150 a month for your payment, and then you're trying to figure out how am I going to pay that back. So be mindful when you get that credit card, what your payment would be if you had it totally maxed out, and could you afford to have that payment if it is totally maxed out.
And one thing, I'm actually big time in favor of credit card interest. How do you avoid paying credit card interest? Pay it off. Yeah. That's one good thing about credit cards. If you pay your balance in full, no interest expense for most cards. So I actually never paid interest on a credit card.
And there are a lot of those out there right now that offer, 18 months, 24 months with no interest on them. They're great as long as you use them and you pay them off before it comes to that 18-month period, because the minute you go over that 18-month period, then all of the interest accrues is due at that time.
Yeah, and I have a comment on that. I agree with everything that Casey and Debbie said, and keep in mind my comments on everything are from the perspective of someone who is at retirement and has built up a certain amount of wealth. So credit cards are simply a tool, and it's how you use it, like's already been said. I have never seen anyone get in trouble by not using a credit card. I have seen people get in all kinds of trouble by using a credit card improperly.
He said, can you establish a credit if you use a prepaid cash card?
No, it does not report to the credit bureaus.
So if you are looking for an establishment process, she had mentioned secured card. That's the best way to start. And what you do is you would go into an institution where it offers secured credit cards. And so for us, you would give $500, and then we're going to give you a credit card with a $500 limit on it. And that's just to secure it in case you do get into a situation that you can't pay it back. We have something collateral to kind of hold where if you get into a situation, and for a younger person trying to establish credit, it's probably a better phase to go into doing a secured credit card where they put a little bit down first instead of just going straight into a $1,000 unsecured, just run wild, like I did.
And on the secured card as well, if you use that every month, you pay it off, you handle it very well in the first year, your credit score will look very good after your first year. It will only be one trade line, but it will still look good on your credit reporting, and it will give you a good credit score to get started.
Well, many of you have probably heard a lot of things about fraud with credit cards and debit cards. So I wanted the panel to address that and tell us what, Casey actually has a real recent story on that, and then also talk about the safeguards, things we should do to protect ourselves when using a debit and credit card.
Yeah, so we were actually talking in the back, and he asked me to kind of address it. Yesterday I had a guy come in with his credit card statement of a credit card that he didn't open. And he was like, well, I've got this statement, but I don't have a card with you guys. And as I started looking further into it, he had an account with us, a $7,500 loan with us, and a credit card with us, and he had never been in one of our institutions before. His license, social security number, and all of that good stuff had been stolen, and whoever had taken it was able to open an account via online processes and stuff like that. We went through what he needed to do, and first he needed to go file a police report, and then call all three of the credit bureaus and have your credit frozen, let them know that you've been a part of identity theft, and then call the Social Security company or Social Security Administration company. Call the Social Security Administration and just let them know that that had been a product of fraud as well. A couple of things that you can do to just make sure that that's not happening. You obviously safeguard all your stuff, make sure that you're keeping up with your wallets and all those good things. But Credit Karma is a good place to go to. Credit Karma gives you up-to-the-minute updates, something that's just open under your social security number or your name or account or something like that. So you have all of these apps out there these days where it seems like that fraud is easier to get a hold of. It's also easier to catch these days because I know back in the day you could only get one pull a year, and you would have to really keep track of it. But now with Credit Karma, I know that anytime I open something, within 20 minutes, Credit Karma's texted me saying, hey, there's a new account open. So you just need to keep an eye. It's like balancing your checking account or something like that. Keep an eye on your credit to make sure new things aren't opening. Had this gentleman really kept an eye on it, he probably would have caught it quite a bit sooner, as opposed to waiting until a credit card statement came in the mail.
And so how would you go about freezing your credit?
You call into the credit bureaus and freeze it. Not longer than a year ago, they used to charge you for it. Now, because of all the breaches that they're having, the fraud, they now allow you to freeze your credit report. However, if you go out and apply for a car loan or a credit card, the person you're applying with is going to get that back that your account is frozen. So you then will have to call the credit bureau back, get it unfrozen so that your loan can be processed. But it stops anybody else trying to use your Social Security number to get credit.
And yeah, annualcreditreport.com, I think, is the website, so you can go there, and then creditkarma.com, or the app for the Credit Karma thing. And also, just one note here, my department, Accounting and Finance, we had one of my colleagues started getting bills in the mail from his new credit cards. He opened apparently an account at Best Buy and Home Depot. He got like about 10 different things just started showing up in the mail. Someone had gotten his information and just started getting instant, how you get instant credit. Well, they got instant credit. He obviously wasn't on Credit Karma to get notices about all these accounts he was opening up, but he got a whole mess of them. And so, yeah, it is a common thing, so definitely appreciate it. Let's see, so still on the borrowing, when is it okay to borrow money? Are there things you should borrow money to pay for? And do you have any guidelines on how much that is enough or how much max you should have?
Well, I have a comment or an opinion on that. Now, again, from my perspective, retirement and building wealth is the goal, and I'm a fan of not being in debt, minimizing debt. So my benchmarks are only borrow money for an asset or something that produces income. So student loans, well, that's going to help you get a job and produce income. And then there's guidelines for that. Yeah, and I'm very conservative. Again, people will probably disagree with this, but I want to minimize borrowing and consumer debt. So for a house, hard to save up and pay cash for a house, although I know people that have done it. A car, on the other hand, you can't. Again, I'm probably the minority view, and just I've seen debt get people into trouble. Not that it's wrong or evil, you just have to be very careful with it.
Creating debt to get out of debt is not always the smartest idea. I know that sometimes you hear debt consolidation laws and things like that, and if that's a route that you have to go down, it's a route that you have to go down. But opening a credit card to get out of debt so that you can have money to get through the week or any other things like that, that's not always the best idea. You know your budget, you know your finances, you know what you can and cannot afford. So it's something that you have to pay attention to. You have to balance between wants and needs and making sure what that is there. So it's a fine line, wise decision that you have to make.
And going on what Casey said, it's very important that you establish a budget. That's going to give you your guideline as to what you can and can't afford. So then it goes down to this is what I really need or what I have to have. So that budget's going to establish what you can do once you start earning money and you're trying to establish credit. So always make sure you have a good budget to follow.
And based on needs, you need a dependable car. You don't need a Black Ops F-250 for $80,000.
He said some students never graduate. There's a debt issue with that.
On the student loan debt, some of the stuff that I've seen, I don't think it really matters whether you graduate or not. The student debt is still going to be there. And one of the things is to arm yourself with knowledge. Know how much money you have borrowed. Know how much your interest rate is. Every year, a lot of your student loans change interest rates. They're not always the same interest rate. So when you do get out of school and you start looking at your student loans, find that student loan that has the highest interest rate. Get that one paid off first and work your way down to the lowest interest rate, because your interest is accruing daily, and the more you pay it down, then your principal balance is going down. It's not accruing as much interest, and you really need to ensure that you're getting those student loans paid off as quickly as possible. And another thing with your student loans, everybody, if you've made your one payment every month on your student loan, it's going to give you 12 payments every year on your student loan. However, if you came out of college, you have a job, you have established your budget, my suggestion would be to go out there and set up your student loan to where you can do an auto transfer. Auto transfers will also get you a 0.25% off of your student loans as well. If you set up an auto transfer, they will give you a 0.25% off of your student loans. But if you set up an auto transfer for every other week, so every 2 weeks you're making a payment on your student loan, at the end of the year you're going to have 13 payments instead of 12 payments. So that's an extra month left towards the principal of that loan. So again, it's less accrued interest on it. So you just really have to know what your student loans are, what your interest rate is, and take it from there.
Yeah, for people who might not have heard that, he said, if you get in school, stay in school, graduate, get a good job. I'm summarizing. Is that an okay summary?
Well, but I want those who
Basically
don't
what
have
he's
to
saying,
Oh, yeah,
if you're going to college, the expectations, you're going to come out of college, you're going to get a good paying job. So you'll be able to pay your student loans back. However, if you do not finish school, the student loans will still be there, but you're not going to get that expected salary that you would have gotten if you finished college and got your degree. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess, sorry, my explanation was clear. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just go flip side of that? He's saying if you should stay in school and graduate and pay your student loan. The situation that I've seen happen, and I know many people that it has, is they've graduated and they can't afford to pay the student loan because they can't get that job in that field anymore, other than with the burden. So then they have to do a deferred payment. So that's something people, students and everyone needs to be aware of. Just because you're in college, don't think once you graduate, you're going to get that dream job, because it's not happening like it used to. Sorry to rain on anybody's career, but it's true. You got to know that. You got to have a backup plan too, and there is the deferred payment plan. So when you do graduate, you can't get that job. You know, there's a deferred payment there also. That's something you have to think about.
And that's just the real world, as my dad used to say.
It's
And
sad.
a guideline for that is that, if we're bursting bubbles, a guideline that I like is when you, as far as student debt, is 1 year, nothing. Say it in a better way. Maximum student debt should be ideally no more than 1 year of your expected starting salary. So if you're thinking you're going to get a realistic salary, so everyone doesn't start out at 100 grand. So let's say $40,000. Then your goal would be to have a student debt when you graduate of no more than $40,000. That may not always be realistic, so I'm just giving you a rule of thumb and a guideline. That way, if you don't get the job, you've at least kind of capped the debt, because as we just said, the debt is not going to go away just because you don't get the job you want. So it kind of puts some safety net around it.
Well, we started talking about this a little bit, some follow-up with part of this advice for getting out of debt. You heard a little there about paying bi-weekly instead of every month. Any other advice for people who may be in debt and just need to work their way out?
It's the same thing with the student loans as it is with credit cards. If you have multiple credit cards, same thing. Look at the interest rate, take your highest interest rate, focus on that one first, pay the minimum payments on your other ones, and then work your way back down until you get them all paid off. And if you don't need that credit card, when you pay it off, cut it up.
Is it bad to have credit cards that you're not using, is the question?
That's kind of a yes and no kind of thing like that. If you are establishing credit, if you're in the establishing credit phase, yeah, it's bad to have them if you're not using them because you're not showing a credit history. If you've already hit the 800s and you've got immaculate credit and you've done great, it's not going to hurt you that bad to have a credit card that you're not using. But in the establishing phase, which I assume quite a few of the people in this room are, yeah, you don't want to open a card that you're not going to use because you're not showing anything on paper that you're able to use credit adequately.
follow-up to that is on Credit Karma, it gives me like a very low mark for having only one credit account. Do you really have to have more than one credit card?
Certain institutions require you to have at least 3 trade lines before they let you borrow. And so it just depends on who and where you're borrowing from. So one might not be the best thing, but if you're taking care of that one, it's only affecting you positively. But I know that there's some places that only would require you to have at least 3. And so it's kind of like applying for a job where you have to have a job history. They want 5 years history. Well, how am I going to get history if you don't give me the job? And it's, well, how am I going to get credit if you don't give me credit? I'm coming to you for that. So it's kind of one of those things. And that starting out phase is a little bit more difficult. And so one credit line is helping you because it's helping your credit score, but it's also not going to get you a loan from every company out there because you've only got one trade line.
And what it does too, it will allow you to possibly go in and purchase a vehicle, get a loan for a vehicle, but you won't get the best interest rate the first go around because you only have that one trade line. But once you pay on that a year or so, then your credit score starts going up. You can refinance the car, but it's just a matter of establishing it. That one isn't going to get you the best credit score, but it will help you get a starting point.
Lady back left, do you still have a question? All right, just over here, I can't see.
Back there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sure.
Okay, so I have a TJ Maxx card and it was maxed out for this month, I guess. And so I got my refund back, my school refund back, and so I decided, oh, okay, I'm gonna pay down for 30%. And 3 days later, after I paid down 30%, they like cut my card to exactly max it out again. Why would they, like, why would a credit company max out my card again after I paid 30% and like mid 30% on the card? Like it was $500 and then I turned it down to 180, and then 3 days later it was like 201 with my max.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
No idea why they would do that. I personally don't like store cards just because they naturally carry a much higher interest rate. And assuming they could probably make up rules on their own of changing your balance anytime that they want to. So I don't really know on that one. That would be, yeah.
I've not seen that either. So.
I've seen them increase it before when you make a payment without asking you, but I've never seen them just like, you know what, we want to keep her maxed out. So let's, no,
I'm not seeing it either.
Sounds like one worthy of being cut up.
I would not use my TJ Maxx card anymore. So that would just be me.
So, like she said, there are a lot of credit cards, especially store cards, that we should just not even think about getting. So as a person who's starting to try and look for the right credit card to get, or multiple like 2 or 3 max, what stores or what places do you suggest to get a credit card from? Such as like Target, your bank, what do you suggest are the best with low interest on it and also won't give us too much potential debt that we can get into?
So for me, because I had to go through a pretty nice credit rebuilding phase, right? Capital One was really good to me. And I know that they take care of people who are starting or rebuilding credit, and they're only going to give you right out first like a $300 limit, and it hasn't been a terrible interest rate. It's not been a great interest rate. Look, bad credit is expensive. They have it. It's not going to be the best interest rate in the world, but I can kind of sit here and advocate for Capital One. But also secured cards, again, we'll go back to that for a second. They're going to just carry a lower interest rate because the collateral is secured on it. Capital One for me, they've been a big help.
And I like the secured credit card. And the problem with the store cards is it does have a high interest rate, but if you are late on any payment, then it jumps up to the next higher interest rate, which goes into the 30s, and so then you're paying a lot more on the purchase that you made. So store cards, you really need to make sure you read what the little pamphlet that they give you on that and make sure you know what you're getting into.
Isn't there a cap on the interest rate that they can charge? Like you said before, they used to be like 24.9%.
I think so, and it should be in the documentation that you get, but it's still, like if they start you off, say at 16.9%, you make a late payment, then they'll take you up to the max amount that they're allowed to charge you for interest.
A good resource that I would recommend or encourage you to go to is nerdwallet.com, because they are well researched and unbiased, and you can actually look up credit cards saying what are the best rewards cards, what are the best cashback cards. zero interest cards.
They also will define out for you exactly what a credit bureau looks at, the percentages for the different weights as to how they get your score. NerdWallet has a lot of the different, like you said, just really good information out there.
How many of you guys use Credit Karma? Do any of you guys use it as your, okay, so you know at the, if you're using it, you know at the bottom sometimes you say, these are the things you can apply for and probably get approved. Research those before you do, because they have advertisement with those people, you know what I'm saying? And so that's not always looking out for you in your best interest. So just a heads up on that. Credit Karma is good to know where your score is landing and falling, but it's not the best advocate for go apply for this, because some of those cards are going to carry a higher interest rate as well too. So research those things before you start that application process, because that company is paying for advertisement with Credit Karma. Just as we were talking that through, I wanted to.
Yeah, just basically arm yourself with knowledge. If you're going to go out there and try to establish credit, arm yourself with knowledge and know what you're doing and know what you're getting into.
Yeah, here's, anybody else have any questions on that? We got this.
I have a question. Since you stated that you were in a similar situation, how would you recommend someone build back up their credit if they do reach a pretty low number?
A lot of hard work and never ever missing a payment again. And so for me, I got lucky and was able to. There was a couple of things that I still had open, so I just started being very diligent in making sure I was paying those few things that I still had open on time. But if you don't have that situation where you don't have some stuff still open, I feel like we're preaching a back and forth on this, but secured card, you're going to get approved on a secured card because you're putting something down, and it does positively impact your credit score if you're paying it on time and doing it right and paying attention to your balances. So anything that you can go out there and do that would be secured and get approved on, but first thing you need to do is find out why you got in that situation in the first place, and then very wise decisions. So.
And lay out that budget.
Yeah.
Put it all paper. When you look at your paper and you see this is how much I have coming in, this is how much I have going out, it's really eye-opening, and it will make you take a step back and think about what you need to do. And again, like I said, look at your highest interest rate credit cards and try to get those paid off first.
It's never gonna just stop paying.
No.
So just.
And it takes time. It doesn't just go away in the next few months. It's going to take you some time to dig out something like that.
Yeah, and beans and weenies don't taste too bad. You know, you get used to them after a while.
Well, one note on the credit card to pick, I had, I guess, different guidelines. My daughter, to throw her in here, she just graduated, just got her first real job, but she's been trained since the age of 3 with a budget. So I, started giving her an allowance at age 3. So when she talked about what credit card she get, we picked the best rewards card for her. So didn't care about interest rate because she's going to pay that thing in full every month, or else, she'll pay her credit card. She's real regimented, doesn't charge more than she can afford to pay, and so what she focused on was rewards cards.
Amen. I got a funny story like that too. It must go with being an accounting major or something, because I trained her in similar fashion. She's 20 now, and she likes to tell her friends about the time when she was 4 years old, and her dad taught her about sales tax, that the price you see marked on the shelf isn't really what you pay, because they add more to it. So.
I can one-up that. I actually, this is really bad, I tell people this, but when she was little, she would sometimes drink a little bit of her milk and go, I don't like it, at a restaurant. And so I started saying, babe, if you drink all your milk, we'll pay for it. But if you can't drink it all, you don't drink at least half, I'm going to charge you $1 for it. That's like at age 5, sorry. So she would drink all her milk with me. Sorry.
And they're two well-adjusted adults now.
Well,
mostly.
To follow up on the credit scores, what would a credit score start out at? What would be a typical credit score for a new college student just starting out? What kind of score should they shoot for?
But starting out, it's going to be a 0. We don't have anything. So it can only go up from there. But 0 credit is better than bad credit, which is because at least you have a clean slate. you want to reach for 700s, 800s, but I know, again, it depends on where you're borrowing from, what their bottom line is. I know for us, we don't lend lower than a 570 at sometimes, and then that is going to carry a higher interest rate. Again, low credit scores are expensive to carry because you're going to have a higher interest rate on that.
I was just going to say the same thing is basically if you have a lower credit score, you may be able to get a loan that's going to be at a higher interest rate. And it's just basically you're going to have to pay for a little while to get that credit score where it needs to be.
Oh, yes.
Where do you get secured credit cards? From banks or?
Credit unions, we have them at Panera.
Okay, but otherwise it's other banks as opposed to
Yes.
Discover?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, building credit for me wasn't that difficult. I started up and I got a card from Capital One, like you said, and it was a $300 limit. And it was about 6 months. I started at a 580 FICO, and in 6 months I was at 720. And so it's going a lot slower from there. But yeah, I think now the limit on my card's like 1,000, but like I pay it off in full every month, and it jumped up really fast. So it's not as smart as what I was thinking.
So wait, it went from 580 to 720 in 6 months with one credit card?
With one credit card.
You had no credit or zero, or bad credit.
Yeah, I think I had a small student loan, and that was it on my credit.
Right.
Good.
So that goes back to you had a really high credit score, but if you're borrowing from a place that requires you to have 3 trade lines, even though that credit score is really good, you may still not get approved. So there's a couple of factors, or more than one factor, that institutions factor in just for an approval. And so it may be an amount of trade lines, how long you've had credit, how long you've been on your job is something that they look at too. So it's not just the credit score that gets you approved, but that higher credit score speaks a very high volume for you.
Yes.
So I've been using a credit card for over a year now, and I usually pay all the payments on time, but my credit score is still around 750. How do I go up to the 800s or higher than that?
850 is about the highest you can go. So that's a great credit score. Very good.
He said
Just continue-
750.
750. You just continue to pay and charge up, pay, and are you paying it totally off each time, or you just?
I either pay it off or pay the minimum, but I make sure to pay it out on time every time.
And you have just one?
Yeah.
It'll probably go up eventually when you get another trade line or you do some other type of loan. It will eventually go up a little bit more, but 750 is an excellent credit score.
Do you have a car loan yet?
Car loan?
Yeah. So when not saying go get a car loan, you can't afford to go get a car loan, but I say when you go get a car loan, that will increase it some too, because that's just another trade line that's on there and carries a little bit more weight on it too. So when you get a car loan, that'll help out too.
And that 750 will get you a good interest rate on the car loan.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Being a woman compared to being a man, was your credit affected? Because I've noticed that women have a little harder time building their credit than men do. Like, I've done everything like someone else has done, but my credit still, I mean, him being a man, me being a female, you have the same number. It's like, I remember, I don't know if that's a...
The credit bureaus are not supposed to look at any of those type of demographics at all. So I don't know why that would be.
I've heard that, so I don't know.
What kind of credit score considered as a good credit score as a landlord?
What credit score is considered a good credit score for a lender is the question.
Lender or
Landlord.
landlord?
Landlord. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Sorry about that.
I don't think that your credit score will necessarily get you denied from getting an apartment or something like that. What they're going to look is, are you paying your bills on time? So
Right.
it's not necessarily that they are looking for your credit, like an apartment complex or anybody you're renting from. Now, I've never been a landlord, so I'm just speaking from what I think, because I've gotten apartments before with my credit score when it used to be really bad. They're just going to factor whether you have a higher deposit to pay. It is going to affect your deposit, but they're just looking at your payment history is what they're looking for. Are you going to pay rent on time? Kind of thing like that. So I don't necessarily think they're really looking for a credit score.
What's the benefits of maintaining a high credit score?
The question is, what are the benefits of maintaining a high credit score?
It's for me, it's just getting the best interest rate when you're trying to borrow. When you're buying a home later on in life, buying a car, anything that you do, if you have a higher credit score, you're going to get the best interest rate possible.
Yes.
I bought my first car back in 2008, and they had at that time first-time car buyers program. Do y'all still offer stuff like that nowadays?
Yes, but different. So yeah, some places do carry a first-time buyer program. If you're asking specifically for Pen Air, we actually request a cosigner up front now, whereas before there were a couple different stipulations. And so stipulations can change with whatever's happening kind of like in the economy these days or any of that other stuff like that. So we do still have somewhat of a first-time buyers program, but the stipulations have changed probably from what you borrowed in 2008.
Yes.
So how do I switch a little bit over to home mortgages for just a second, if that's okay? I'm looking to purchase a new home, and I was just wondering, what is kind of the level that's comfortable for a down payment to get your footing into that payment process for our home mortgage, and what's kind of the healthy level to enter into as far as the down payment for your first home, as a person coming out of college or
The question is about the down payment, typical down payment, or a good down payment on a house.
percentage-wise, based off of how much obviously the home is, what's the healthy down payment to begin that process?
I think the best option would be for you to sit down with somebody and kind of go over what your income is going to be now, what you're looking for. There's a lot of different programs out there for first-time home buyers. There's several different ones out there. So it would be best to sit down with a mortgage lender that has those different products and find out what it is. Because there's some that have a very minimal amount of a down payment that you have to put. You have to look at your closing costs as well.
Right.
But that would be the best thing is to sit down. There's also tools online that you can go and look at, but I think if you really want to borrow in a certain area, then you need to probably go to a financial institution in that area so that they're more well-versed in what is out there and what you'll need.
Some guidelines, I agree with what Debbie said, some guidelines that I'd like to use, and keep in mind, again, mine's from the standpoint of minimizing debt and building wealth. I like to see 20% down, so $100,000 house is $20,000. The percentage kind of takes care of itself. And then the goal would be for your mortgage expense, the principal and interest, to not be at maximum 30% of your budget. And then total housing expenses, meaning repairs, insurance, property taxes, and all that to be, again, this is a maximum, no more than 40% of your income. And just kind of keep in, and that's kind of high. That's too high for me personally, but that keeps you from getting too much underwater.
Any other questions on debt? Wait, do you guys have any good budgeting tools that you would suggest to people?
Yeah, with the way that mobile banking is going these days, and a lot of institutions will, wherever you bank at, probably has some good balanced stuff that you can look at and use and see where you're spending your money and how you're spending it. I know for us personally, again, if I were to speak for Pen Air, we have a great website that tells you where your money's going and how much is going to that, and you can look at the, call it a widget. It's a widget? Yeah, you can look at the widget. It looks like the Wheel of Fortune, yeah. And it shows you like if it's going for entertainment or food or this or kind of that breaks it down for you. And then for me, I'm a little, I use the mobile banking. I'm a little old school. I've got a little notepad that I go in and write on every week when I know that it's time for paychecks to start coming in. I'm like, right, we're paying this, and this, and I factor out how much money I have left over, what I'm going to put in my savings account, what I'm going to Christmas club. So it's with the resources that you have in apps and online banking and stuff these days, it's countless. And there's so much out there that you can use. Just make sure you're being smart about it.
I recently got a car loan for y'all, and when I set up y'all's account, like I could add all my other banks to your site and see everything in one place, and I really like that. And it has like the budget and what I'm spending. Like one of my accounts, I spend all my bills from, the other ones where I save my money. And so I have like 2 paychecks. So it really helps me look at everything in one spot. So I can figure figure out what I can do differently.
Right.
Right.
And if you're paying attention to it, you know where your money is funneling to that it probably shouldn't be, or just kind of things like that. So as long as you're watching and paying attention, you've got something that tracks it for you, you'll be good on that.
And I would direct you back again to nerdwallet.com. It has some tools on there for budgeting. There's also another site that I like called crown.org, crown.org. I'll warn you, full disclosure, that's a faith-based site, but it has some very good tools as far as what is reasonable amounts to spend for certain categories, which is helpful for a lot of people.
Any other debt questions? I have a softball question for the group here. I didn't pick this just because the group's all from Penn Air, Federal Credit Union, but I actually believe everybody should have a credit union account. So why are credit unions a good place to have an account?
Because all banks are evil.
For me, I didn't really know much about credit unions until I started working at a credit union. I'd always used banks, but there's a couple of high points that I actually really like about being a member at a credit union, also being employed by a credit union as well. So one of the biggest things is you are a member of a credit union. You're an active. You have say-so. You have potential to speak up. We have a board that a lot of our decisions go through. So we're not just ran by one president. Yes, we do have a president in the credit union, but a lot of the final say-so has to be approved by the board, and all of the board are members of the credit union. So essentially, no decisions are really going to be made that aren't going to have a positive impact, because why would someone make a decision that was going to hurt them in the long run, right? And so that to me is just, you have stake in the place that is holding your money. Also, cheesy-ish as it kind of sounds, is very community and environment, community driven. We know a lot of our people by name as soon as they walk in the door, and it's very personal. Typically, credit unions are, to use the word community, and very, very involved in the community. The fact that we're getting to sit up here today and speak to you guys is a huge advocate for what credit unions actually do in the community and being a part of things like that. There's not as many fees per se. We do have fees, but there's not as many as that you would run into at a bank. I know that if you have a low amount in your checking account, there's certain institutions out there that will charge you money because you don't have money in your account. That doesn't make sense to me. But then, so the fees are something you have as a member more of a say-so in what happens with your money. I think that would probably be the biggest thing. I feel like I'll ramble on about it, but you have more of a say-so in a credit union. You have stake in it. You're an owner. You're a member, and it means more to you. I know it means a ton to me now that I get to be a part of it.
Like you said, it's community, but I think it's also family. We like to make sure that we know the people who are coming in that we serve every day.
Here's the nerd's view answer for that. Casey and Debbie said it better. The credit union is a not-for-profit financial cooperative. Banks are typically stockholder companies. You say, well, who cares? What does that mean? It means in the credit unions do not have stock. They're owned by their depositors or their members. So every depositor, whether you got $25 or $200,000, has a say in what happens at the institution in a credit union. So if the credit union is run by its depositors/members, banks are run by their stockholders, many of whom do not even have deposits at the institution. So banks are governed by people that often have no vested interest in what happens at the ground level. So that's the nerd's view. That's how the inner workings are.
Sounded quite a bit better than mine, so that was good.
Nerd.
Also, I noticed, like, I'm from Panel City, so, like, when we got hit by the hurricane, there's credit union, Tyndall over there, they're a credit union, and I know the CEO, who's a friend of mine. And the banks over there, they got hit too, but they didn't really, like, look for their clients, figure out, their customers, figure out if they were okay or anything like that. And the credit unions were reaching out, trying to make sure their customers had food, that their bank was taken care of. They were doing, like, policing up their people, kind of. And, like, I saw that compared to a credit out by my credit union first compared to my bank when it comes to like a disaster situation. Like taking care of, like they have like more of a, like a, you belong to us and we're gonna take care of you kind of vibe.
Well, in the same sense as that, you felt that way, which is super awesome and speaks very highly of Tyndall. In the same, we sent a lot of help over to help the other credit unions. So not only is it a community environment between the employees of the credit union and the members, but it's a community involvement between credit unions and credit unions. We sent our mobile ATM machines over to help out. I don't exactly know which credit union it was, but we sent over there to help out for their member base because they were shut down for a while. Our vault guys went over and helped out for a few days or a week, I think it was. I can't remember what they said in the meeting. But so it's not only just employees helping members, but it's credit unions helping credit unions as well. It's a huge community involvement all the way around. So, and props to Tyndall that you felt that way. That's huge.
Why do you think more people don't know about credit unions?
That's a really good question. You know what, I think that personally, and she asked why don't more people know about credit unions. I think that personally, credit unions operate probably on a lower budget, so they have to be wiser about where they spend their money. We are very lucky and blessed to have probably one of the top-notch marketing teams that's around. And so our name is getting out there quite a bit more and more and more, and we're making very strategic decisions. But I do think there's an exclusivity that comes with being a member. So some people don't try because they don't think that they can join a credit union, because years ago they were very shut off and secluded to just certain groups. Like you'll hear a Mobile Educators Credit Union is only for teachers in Mobile County, kind of that. So they're very exclusive at times, but they are opening up their member bases more now and reaching out to get that broader member base. But I think it comes with just being a smaller institution and not having the money for marketing that they could have, and then also that exclusive side of it. People not realizing that they can actually join is a part of it, probably.
I'd like to add that as I'm a member of 2 separate credit unions, but as being older than most of the students in here, for me, I was afraid of credit unions because I didn't see it as a real bank. Right. Not that I couldn't be a member, I just didn't feel like, I didn't know, but I didn't think that they had the same accreditation as a regular bank and the secured accounts and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people still have that misconception that credit unions are not safe, or a real financial institution as far as banks are concerned. Totally wrong. I understand that, but that's kind of an old school way of thinking that, I think some people think of.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's misperception is still out there.
It's funny that you bring it up because we just did a pretty big, a little over a year ago, online banking upgrade. And that's kind of one of our points that we talk about when people are coming in and opening a membership with us. And I had this was when I was working in Robertsdale, and so I had a guy come in and was talking through online banking, and he was like, "You guys have online banking?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, I thought only Wells Fargo did that." I'm like, "Well, yeah, this is Robertsdale, but no, they've got quite a bit of other stuff that's on." So I do think that is a misconception that you have, is we really do offer the same exact, or credit unions, I'm not going to speak just for Panera on that one. Credit unions offer the same things that banks offer, if not more at times. But again, I think it goes back to that exclusive side of it. You never knew because you didn't ask. You didn't get in there and try to figure it out. So, yeah.
And we have indoor plumbing too.
Yeah.
I've purchased 2 cars in my life, and whenever, every time I would purchase or anything, they would be like, try to see what the credit unions try to get the lowest interest rate. How come credit unions have lower interest rate than regular banks?
It goes back to Steve's nerd answer earlier. God, I'm talking a lot, guys. I'm so sorry. We're non-for-profit, so I mean, yes, we do have profits, but it's not our essential main function, kind of thing like that. So
we can give back.
Yeah.
To the membership.
Yeah, we don't pay taxes, so we pass the savings on to the members, and banks hate that.
I was going to say, specifically kind of with both of y'all, like you said, mostly credit unions give you better rates no matter what on CDs or whatever. And the only reason why I have a Regions account still is just because I had my undergrad in Alabama and they didn't have like a Navy Federal or Penn Air. So the only side effect that, or issue that I've seen with a lot of credit unions is that they can't really reach out farther.
Somebody hit a home run for you really
so I was
quick on
gonna
this.
ask, how far do y'all go?
We are nationwide because of a program called shared branching.
Okay.
You can walk into any credit union in the country that is a part of the shared branching co-op and do any kind of transaction that you would in your home branch, except for closing an account or applying for a loan. But if you need to make a deposit, if you need to make a withdrawal, it would be just like you are pulling from your account. So it's a much broader scope now, and a lot of people don't know about shared branching now. Every credit union in the world is not a part of shared branching, but there's more that are a part of it than are not. And then also mobile deposit, take a picture of your check, kind of things like that. But, so look for anything that's part of that shared branching network, and it really broadens it out for you. Sorry, again, talking a lot, sorry.
I would say my son graduated from college up in Ohio. He lives in Ohio, and his credit union is still Penn Air. He does everything through shared branching.
And you can even go on Penn Air's website and put in the zip code of where you're going to be, and it will bring up the other credit unions that you can do the shared branching.
And how many miles they are from your location that you're at.
Banks don't share branch.
Yeah, I'm even more evangelical than you are about credit unions. Every time I went into a bank, they would hit me $15 if I needed a cashier check to pay, or checking account. They're going to hit me for $10 a month. They're going to hit me for the charge for checks. I mean, it was like there was this never-ending fee on top of fee. And so I got brave enough, went into a credit union, and asked them, because I had kept track of all these fees, and they said, oh no, we do all that for free. I said, right. And I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. But so I joined, and it turned out to be true. And so now that I'm on the other end of the age spectrum, I'm looking for CDs to get some income. And I mean, just go online, look at Regions and SunTrust on a 1 or 2 year CD, they're paying like 0.5%. You get over 2%, which may not sound like a big difference. Over 5-10 years, that adds up. Yeah. So I'm going to really toot the horn even more than you're tooting the horn.
So I was told by actual Penn Air person, just being honest, saying, well, you guys don't have credit unions sometimes don't have the best credit cards. So they said it would be cool to have a debit card through a credit union, but get a credit card through a bank because there's higher cash back or all that stuff. Is that still true, or is that was just somebody's opinion?
An opinion?
On our credit card, I feel like we have a good rate on our credit card. We do have some cash back rewards on it. It may not be as big as some of the big banks have, but I do feel like it fits our membership, and we continually look at that and strive to get better with it.
Some of the best rated credit cards are credit union credit cards.
Depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a lower interest rate, then there's a place that you can go. If you're looking for better rewards, there's a place that you can go. So not necessarily to say that a credit union's rewards are bad, but we're not passing out Southwest Sky Miles like a Southwest credit card does. You know, kind of like that. Well, if that's what you're looking for, then that's a smart thing to go for. But if you're looking for a lower interest rate, credit union's probably going to be a better one for you to go down.
Yes, and continuing on the evangelizing the credit unions. I mean, if you go out there and look, you can always find cherry pick some. Oh, this is the best credit card. That someone's always going to have a bigger, better mousetrap. But as far as for the primary financial institution and the overall best value and experience, the credit union is not the good place to go.
I did start with this fun question, but yeah, personal experience, I'm older now, but way back when I did get not pay cash for cars, there was, all the car loans that I've ever gotten were from credit unions. And every time I shopped around at my banks, local rates and all, and every time credit unions came out on top. So they're the place to go for loans, they're the place to go for CDs and savings accounts, etc. So, quick survey, how many of you guys have a credit union account? So that's the homework for the rest of y'all.
We know of a good one.
We're going going to swap over to start talking about assets. We've been talking about debt, so we'll swap over to assets. Add in a question here. Before people get started in investing, what kind of emergency fund or cash account balance would you suggest they have?
I've always thought that, and this is my opinion, once you start earning a paycheck, you always should put 10% of your paycheck into your savings account. You always need to have money in a savings account. You know, your battery goes bad in your car, you have an emergency, you need to leave and go out of town, something medical happens. You always need to have an emergency fund. And based on your budget, you need to establish what that is, but a good habit to get into is 10% of your paycheck each time you get one, and that will help build up your emergency savings fund.
Yeah, you can't ever go wrong. You saving money, 10%, like Debbie said, is a good percentage. Standard financial planning metrics are anywhere from 3 to 6 months living expenses in a savings account or emergency fund. So, and that's an important distinction. Living expenses, not necessarily income. So that's assuming you're living below your means. You're not spending everything you make. So 3 to 6 months living expenses would be a little bit less than 3 to 6 months of actual income. But it boils down to a comfort level also. I know people that just gives them the warm and fuzzy to keep more.
Let's say we've got students that are starting out investing. Maybe they're saving for a big purchase, or maybe they're saving for retirement. How do they go about starting out and investing?
Well, you just do it. You just start. But those are, it's an important question, and those are different goals too. Retirement is different than saving for a car. So I would say the proper context is everything. So let's get things in the proper order so we don't blow up the plan. First, you need to live within your means. Then you establish an emergency fund, like we just talked about, 3 to 6 months income, get your spending under control, and only then do you start the investing program. A lot of people get that out of order. The investing, by definition, is a longer term. Investing, especially in the stock market and things that can fluctuate. So you don't want to do that until you're in a position to leave that money there for long periods of time. And by long periods of time, I mean 5 to 10 years. So you don't want to have to raid your investments because the car breaks down. It defeats the purpose of it. That's what the emergency fund is for. Now, the starting out is more difficult because a lot of places, my department included, we have minimums for assets. So you'll need to, if you want to start investing, you'll have to do it on your own. You can go to places like, Nerd Wallet. I don't work for them. I'm not paid by them. They're just a good, independent, well-researched site. And they actually have a section for online brokers where you can start with, I think some of them have no money down or $500. You can start out someplace with relatively low fees. Then when you build up a certain amount of money, you can sit down with a financial advisor and get some face-to-face time.
And also, if you come out of college with a job, most of your companies have a 401k to offer. I say you go ahead and start off immediately with putting money into your 401k. As long as it's within your budget, you have your debt under control, that's another good place to get started, is your 401k with your employer.
Can you expand on what 401k is and what benefit it has?
401k, getting with the nerd thing here. If you want to really sound like a nerd and impress your friends, 401k, we throw that term around a lot. If you want to really impress people, find where the actual term 401k comes from. Actually from the tax code, section 401 subsection K. So if you want to disperse a party of people, just go up and start talking about the Internal Revenue Code. But the 401k is the retirement plan offered through employers. 401k is typically for private sector companies. Hospitals and schools have what's called a lot of times 403b, which is the same type of thing. That's just a section of the code that authorizes those. Typically, you save your money in there through payroll deduction, so it's very easy. I'm a big fan of easy. Just have it deducted from your check. You don't have to think about it. Most companies will match. So if you put in 1%, they might put in 50 cents on the dollar. or they might match it dollar for dollar. So Panera has a very good 401k plan. They'll start out matching dollar for dollar up to 7%. So I like to tell all new employees, you just got to put 7% in. I don't care if you don't think you can afford it. You can't not do it. You put in 7%, they match 7%. So that's one thing to think about when you're comparing job offers too. Maybe a company has slightly lower salary, but they have more generous 401k matching. That's all things to take into consideration. I agree with what Debbie said. You just do that right away. If there's free money, you just do it. All you have to do is sign a form, and they do it for you. It comes right out of your paycheck, pre-tax. So to save $1 in a 401k might only cost you 75 cents in the 25% marginal bracket. So it's a great thing.
This is just a curious question because I feel like we're all going to get there or be at this point one day. You graduate, you have $30,000 in debt, 4% or 5% interest on your student loans, and you get a really nice job that gives you your 401k. Based off of how you're living, you only have $100 to give either to your 401k or to take off your debt. Which is best? Should you go ahead and get rid of your debt first or put your money into your 401k? Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I don't think you have to think of it as an either or. It can be a both and. You can do more than one thing at a time. Because as much as I hate debt, free money is hard to pass up too. So
sometimes it just depends on the situation.
Yes.
Okay.
So on this theoretical $100, you could do 50 to pay down the debt, assuming that meets the minimum payment required, and then you could do 50 in the 401k.
Also, another thing to look at as well when you're out looking for job opportunities when you're graduating from college, a lot of companies are now going to helping you pay back some of your student debt. So when you're being interviewed by the company, also interview that company. Find out what their benefits are, what they have available to offer you. That is one of the things that is out there right now is helping you pay back your student debt.
One follow-up on that free money with the 401ks. I say if you're in a place if you put in 7%, they'll match 7%. You've absolutely positively got to work your budget where you put in 7%. Because that's 100% return, more than 100% return right now with the tax savings. So you've got to work the budget and get that.
We live in a new era where we no longer can count on old-fashioned pensions. Even state workers are now losing that in some states. So you need to be thinking in terms of you're going to have to save your own retirement. Social Security will only replace about 1/3 of your final salary. So if you don't want to live at a pauper in retirement, you got to be thinking of large sums of money. $1 million is not out of the question. Or I don't pay 40 grand a year. So you say, that's a lot of money. If you begin early, the compounding effect from interest on interest, if you begin right out of college starting to save, you may only have to save out of your own money about 15% of that $1 million. The rest will come from the earnings on the earnings. But if you wait 10 years, you're going to have to put in about 35%. If you wait another 10 years, you're going to have to put in more than half of that. Start thinking about that, because if you wait until 35, 45 and you had to fund half of it, you only got 20 years left of retirement. Divide that into $1 million, that's a big amount of money. So think in terms of, even if you just start putting in a very modest amount, the initial amount that you put in your early 20s will grow to 10 times by the time you reach retirement. So that's how you fund $1 million retirement. But if you wake up in your 40s, like a lot of people are doing today, because they've gone retirement like their dad's retirement, not understanding that he had a pension and they don't have a pension now. So the whole game has changed. So anyway, think in terms of earlier, the less you have to contribute out of your own pocket. Is that fair?
If you're waiting for a perfect time to start saving for retirement or just start saving in general, there's not a perfect time to start that process other than just right now. So then there's the thought process of, well, how much do I need, or how do I start? I think that's something I would run into quite a bit, was like, oh, I need $25,000 to, well, how are you going to get $25,000? You've got to start somewhere. There's enough things out there these days where you could start super small to get into a place where you can start thinking bigger. A lot of times we look at the big picture and we get scared of it and say, there's no way I'm ever going to get to it. We have to understand that it's the small things that make the big picture, that is combined by other stuff. Find apps, find things out there. I personally use Acorns app. Anybody heard of Acorns before? So I use the Acorns app. Stash is out there, and it's a pretty good one as well. And there's a few out there that will connect with your debit card, take your spare change from a transaction. So if I spent $1.37 somewhere, they pretend like it's a $2 transaction. They take the 63 cents, they put it in my Acorns account, and they are investing. I don't know what they're investing in. I don't know how they're investing it. I ask no questions. I just put it on high risk because I'm 36 and don't have that great of a retirement set up.
It's all in Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. But anyway, but it's something, and then I forget that it's there. I randomly ever check that app and don't go back and look at it. I think it's like $1 fee every once in a while. Pay attention to those fees. But if you guys are waiting for that $5,000 mark to start, or you're waiting for that $25,000 mark to start, you've got to start somewhere. And a lot of times we forget that it's the small moments that make the big picture. Find an app that does just a little bit. Look, I'm not making a ton of money off of my Acorns app. I'm putting 26 cents in it a week or something like that. So I'm not, but it's making me something, which is, and again, turning into something. So I just wanted to just encourage the ones who probably thought a little bit more like I did in the 20s, stuff like that. Like, yeah, we'll get there one day, kind of thing. Then start small. Like, if that big picture is scary to you, start small. It's possible, but everybody's got to start somewhere.
That's right, preach it. That's true. And it's one thing to have the knowledge. It's like Casey's saying, it's another thing to take action. So I think back, people were telling me from the time I was a little kid to do it. Well, one of the things of being a young man, back in way yonder a long time ago, is I thought I knew everything. And that's a dangerous thought to have. So like Casey's saying, just start something, just do it. Don't worry about if it's the ideal investment. I've actually had people tell me they're not adding to their 401k because they don't like the investment choices. But they're passing up the free money. I said, did you really just say that? I mean, if you're getting free money, so the investments are sometimes secondary to just the discipline of saving.
So let's say students are starting to save out, or they graduate, starts to saving for retirement. What kind of asset should they purchase? Or how do they get started with stocks?
Well, that's back to you. Until you reach a certain amount, typically you're not going to be able to work to a face-to-face broker or financial advisor until you get to the bigger numbers. And bigger numbers meaning 25,000 sometimes. It's not uncommon for the big brokerage firms to require 100,000 or more. So you got to get, like Casey was saying, you got to get to that point. So you can go to the online firms, like TD Ameritrade is one that Nerd Wallet mentioned, because you can start off with $500 and to purchase something like a mutual fund, which is what I would recommend for beginners. It costs $6 or $7, so the commissions aren't going to eat you up, and you can build a nest egg that way. So again, you just have to start. It's not difficult. Don't get caught up and say, oh, is this the best investment? You can change investments after you start. The important thing is just to start.
So what's a mutual fund?
A mutual fund is just a fancy way of saying it's a group of stocks and or bonds that is professionally managed. So someone else is making the investment decisions for you. You are simply picking the type of mutual fund. When I say type, mutual funds are categorized like large company funds, medium-sized company funds, foreign company funds. Then you leave the individual stock or bond selections to the manager, which is outlined in this prospectus. And that's the disclaimers you see in the print ads or TV where it says, read the prospectus before investing or sending money. Prospectus is the rule book that says what the managers can do with your money. So it's a neat way to start where you literally do not have to know anything about investing. Because you have someone else, a professional money manager, doing it for you.
Anybody have any follow-up questions on getting started with investing? I think we're going to wrap up now and leave it time for individual questions. You can come up and ask the panel. I'm going to run off to class in a bit. You can ask, I'll be here for a few minutes, and then you can ask the panel individual questions if you want, or if anybody has any last minute questions.
Actually, maybe you mentioned KEO with it versus traditional. Would that be worth bringing up to the audience?
You talk about IRAs, retirement plans. Most of the questions I get are traditional IRA. KEO is an old style plan that is like a traditional IRA.
Oh, sorry. I meant Roth.
Roth, yes, that's right. Okay, Roth versus traditional. IRA, which is not there's two kinds of IRAs, a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. IRA is not an investment, it is simply a type of account. It is tax deferred, meaning the taxes on it are delayed. The traditional versus the Roth simply refers to the tax treatment of that account. So traditional IRA, you typically will get the tax benefit up front. When you put money in, you get to deduct it typically, and there's always exceptions. You typically get to take a tax deduction for that. Then later on, when you draw that money out at retirement, you pay taxes at the then current rate. Roth IRA is the opposite of that. It doesn't do you any good tax-wise when you put the money in. There's no tax break at all. However, it does grow tax deferred, and when you take it out at retirement, it is tax-free. That's a powerful thing. Powerful thing. You're never going to pay taxes on it again. So it determines on whether you want your tax break now or way in the future. Typically determines. So a lot of times the Roth is favored. But I would say even before you get into the Roth or the traditional IRA, like we were talking about earlier, if you have an employer-sponsored plan, the 401k with matching, you always want to do that first and get the free money. The IRAs come into it as a supplement to that. So there's a lot of different ways to coordinate these things. They're just tools. There's not always an absolute right answer because it's the context of the individual situation that matters. But just when in doubt, just do something.